Okay, listen. Tennessee is over here and they're all bragging and they're saying, well, we don't pay income tax and our whiskey's cheaper. Meanwhile, Georgia says, hold my sweet tea. There's a rumor going around the state of Georgia that politicians are pushing for no income tax. But before we go and start celebrating with a Waffle House waffle tower, let's see what that actually means for Georgia's schools, roads, and our bank accounts. Hey buddy, my name is Tim Gibson and my channel is all about North Georgia real estate. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're thinking about moving to North Georgia or if you are considering listing your home in the area, I'll be happy to help. My contact info is on the screen. Down in the capital of Atlanta, Georgia, momentum is building on the idea of removing the state income tax altogether. Yes, you heard that right. No state income tax, is that a possibility in the state of Georgia? Well, we'll see. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Nobody really knows as of yet, but the big question is what really happens to the citizens of the state of Georgia if we remove the state income tax. In this video, we are going to ask a couple of questions regarding what will happen if Georgia removes the state income tax, and we will come up with some pros and cons for each scenario, whether Georgia stays with the state income tax or if they remove it altogether. First question we're going to ask is, why even consider removing the state income tax in the state of Georgia? Currently, the state of Georgia has a flat state income tax rate of about 5.19% across all income levels. There's also a plan in place to get the tax rate down to 4.99% by 2029. Some of the politicians in the state of Georgia, down in the capital in Atlanta, have mentioned wanting to remove the state income tax altogether, hence the reason why we're shooting this video. Advocates argue that dropping the state income tax could make Georgia a lot more competitive considering we are bordering Florida to the south and Tennessee to the north. Both of those are no state income tax states. Most importantly, these politicians believe that removing the state income tax will attract new residents and businesses, increase investment, and reduce the tax burden on working Georgians. We all agree that the tax code is super complicated, and having a simpler tax code with little or no different tax brackets will be a great thing for those of us who are citizens, and hey, it may even help out our CPAs who are doing our taxes for us. Georgia has already started moving this direction by removing the graduated tax bracket system and moving to a flat state tax. But as Optimus Prime would say, there's more than meets the eye. For those of you who aren't old like me, Optimus Prime is a famous cartoon character from Transformers. So if you're eliminating a major revenue source for the entire state of Georgia, it requires a little bit more than just saying, hey, let's just wipe it out and just see what happens. I've heard about 50% of the state's revenue comes in from the state income tax. So how will the politicians in the state of Georgia replace that revenue? Current law on the books in the state of Georgia, HB 1437, sets parameters for income tax cuts. Like I mentioned earlier, Georgia has switched to a flat income tax and has scheduled triggers for further rate cuts for the state income tax. So to eliminate the state income tax entirely, the politicians of the state of Georgia have to answer this important question: how do you find that $20 billion in revenue somewhere else? Do you raise other taxes like property taxes, sales taxes, etc.? Or what we wish all politicians would do is maybe just reduce the spending. So if that $20 billion in revenue goes away, what happens to infrastructure, education, important programs that a lot of people in the state of Georgia rely on? Research shows that when states get rid of the state income tax, sales tax and/or property taxes tend to rise. So the question isn't just could the state of Georgia remove the state income tax, but also should Georgia do it? And if so, how do we do it? Okay, so here are some of the arguments in favor of removing the state income tax. Tax relief for wage earners and businesses. I would be happy with that, and I think a lot of the citizens of the state of Georgia would agree. Removing the income tax means more take-home pay for workers and potentially a more attractive environment for job creators. Another argument would be simplicity. Eliminating or reducing a state income tax reduces the amount of time that people have to spend working on compliance. It also lowers administrative costs and paperwork. Third would be a competitive advantage. With states like Florida and Tennessee already having no state income tax, Georgia could better position itself to attract highly skilled workers and investment from businesses. And lastly, no state income tax can boost growth and increase migration, people moving into the state from other states that are a little bit more expensive. All right, so those are the positives. What are the negatives? What are the risks for removing the state income tax? The biggest hit will be a loss of revenue for the state of Georgia. Eliminating the income tax is going to remove a major income stream, $20 billion or about 50%, like I mentioned earlier. Unless the income tax is replaced with another source of revenue or other sources of revenue, the state may face budget shortfalls or service reductions. Another possible outcome is having to shift the tax burden elsewhere. If revenue has to come from somewhere else instead of the income tax, you risk increasing the tax burden on lower and middle class households. This is most likely to come from an increase in sales and property taxes, like I mentioned earlier. Next on the list will be service cuts and infrastructure impact. Education, public health, transportation could suffer if funding isn't secured from new sources. The main takeaway here is that removing the state income tax looks attractive, but the devil's in the details. And I'm going to tell you, if we're not paying state income tax, the government is going to find a way to get the revenue that they need to run the state. Some of the logical questions that I think lawmakers should be asking are as follows. I think the main question to ask here, and the most obvious one to me, is where is the revenue going to come from if we are not going to be getting it from the state income tax? Who wins and who loses in this scenario? What is the impact on working class families, retirees, low income earners? If funding shifts, then what are the implications for the education system, transportation system, and the infrastructure for the entire state? If funding does shift, what impact does that have on infrastructure, public services, health and safety, all the things that we rely on as citizens of the state of Georgia? Next on the list, what is the real impact on cost of living? How will removing the state income tax affect the cost of living for an average Georgia citizen? Think about the things that you spend money on every single day: gas, groceries, insurance, everything else. How are those items going to be affected? Lastly, if the state income tax is eliminated, how do you ensure things like budget discipline? How do you protect state services? And how do you avoid deficits? So let's play it out and take a look at maybe a real world scenario in the future. Let's say by 2029, the state of Georgia has implemented the 4.99% state income tax rate. Let's say a vote is taken and the state income tax is eliminated. And for the sake of our scenario, we are going to replace it with higher sales tax and property taxes. And then by 2030, let's say Georgia starts marketing itself as a no state income tax state. Then what happens? Now, this is my scenario. Obviously, who knows if this is actually going to happen, but I'll just give you my idea. In the short term, workers are probably going to get some tax relief because there's no state income tax. Consumers tend to spend more if they've got more disposable income, and businesses start to relocate to the state of Georgia. And in the midterm, to make up for the lost revenue, sales tax starts to increase, consumption becomes more expensive, and property taxes start to increase. If growth is strong, the state does stay competitive, especially when thinking about other states that don't charge a state income tax. And if not, the state may face severe cutbacks or higher local taxes. The bottom line here is that if the state does decide to remove the state income tax, the transition has got to be managed very, very carefully. Otherwise, there is a risk of unintended and potentially catastrophic consequences. To sum it all up, eliminating the state income tax can be a bold move, can be a really positive move for the state of Georgia, but it's definitely not a silver bullet. The question really isn't, can we do this? But it's more, if we do this, how will we manage it and how do we manage it effectively so that the state of Georgia and the residents of the state of Georgia are not impacted negatively across the board? Bottom line for lawmakers is we need transparent discussion. We need to know exactly how this will affect us as citizens, and we need to make sure that this is going to be a good thing for all of us across the board, regardless of income level, education level, whatever. If you are a citizen of the state of Georgia and you're watching this, tell me what you think about the potential of removing the state income tax and how you may be affected negatively or positively. If you're watching this video from another state and you're thinking about moving to the state of Georgia, tell me what your thoughts are about the potential of removing the state income tax. Does that look positive to you, or do you think that may be a negative? As always, my number is on the screen if you are considering moving to North Georgia or if you are considering listing your home. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.